Hey folks, Chris here with Pistol Creek Panfishing. So here we are on the tail end of the dog days of summer. It's Labor Day weekend, beautiful weather out, and of course that means that every jet ski, ski boat, and bass boat within a 100-mile radius all seem to be out on the lake at the same time right now. So that being said, this is not my ideal time of year to take my little pond prowler boat or my kayak out on big water and fight with all that traffic while I'm trying to have a relaxing day of fishing. But fortunately, this is a fantastic time of year to do what I'm out doing today, and that's some creek fishing along the little greenway here that runs through town. This creek is one of my favorite places to fish year-round anyway, just because of the wide variety of panfish that seem to be out there in it. I never catch any big monster fish out of there. It's not to say they're not in there, I just don't seem to find them. But there is a great variety of different species. There are bluegill, red breast, rock bass, green sunfish, maybe some shellcracker I think I've caught out of here before. Also some largemouth and smallmouth. You'll occasionally even hook the old accidental catfish, or at least it's accidental when I hook one of them. But that said, I brought along one of my all-time, if not very favorite lures to use when targeting panfish, and that's the Trout Magnet. Now, if you've never fished with trout magnets before, don't let the name fool you. While they were designed for trout fishing, and they probably work well for those, these are an absolutely dynamite pan fishing lure. You can catch anything that swims on these, at least I'm convinced, because I've caught all those fish I mentioned earlier on these, and even some accidental drum and catfish on them from time to time. But just a very versatile all-around lure that catches small fish and even some big ones sometimes. As a matter of fact, I think the biggest largemouth bass I've ever caught out of this creek by far happened to be on a bulldog color trout magnet. And sometimes you'll luck into catching a bigger bass on one of these things. Always amazes me that the size of fish that will actually hit these sometimes. What I've got here in my hand is just a little fly box that's got a bunch of pre-rigged trout magnets, and these are on the 1/64 ounce Trout Magnet brand jig heads, which are super ideal for these particular lures. They're just made for them, but they're really good, strong little hooks, and that 1/64 ounce weight is ideal for fishing shallow water like little creeks that I'm going to be fishing in today. The Trout Magnet comes in a ton of different colors. These are just some of my personal favorites that I use very frequently. And this is the Blue Dun, which is a blue and black split. Bison, which is kind of a gold and black split. Bulldog is probably my top lure that I use, or color I use the most frequently. This is a red and black, and then I've just got some red and then a purple haze down here, which is kind of a purple and pink. All these colors work really well for me, especially over here in this creek, but I'll go ahead and tell you, out of all the different colors that trout magnets come in, and there's a bunch of them, they all work. You can catch fish on about any of them. I think the only real difference is if you're fishing somewhere and the water's kind of muddy or murky, some of those colors are going to have a little more contrast and possibly show up better, and you'll have a better chance of a fish seeing that from a few feet away. But other than that, they all produce, they all work well. You can't go wrong with them. If I can get the camera to focus there, I'm going to try to show you this up close in case you hadn't seen them before. But they're just a little straight split tail grub here, not much to them, very little action, but honestly I think the simplicity is what makes these work so well, especially in shallow or calm water when the fish might not be overly aggressive. These things just seem to draw them out. I have a ton of luck fishing these with crappie in the winter in particular. Some of those days when I start out fishing bigger lures, and I've tried Bobby Garland's or even the bigger crappie magnets, which also work well, sometimes I can't get them to hit those, and it'll seem like I'll switch and downsize to one of these 1/64 ounce jig heads with a trout magnet on it, and they'll start hitting these. I think it's when the fish are sluggish and things like that, this sometimes is the only lure that I personally can get them to hit. Now, I'm sure there's other stuff that works, but again, I've had success with these. They're really inexpensive. You can get a package that has like 5 of the grub bodies, it may be 7, and then a few jig heads for about $2 at Walmart or Bass Pro, Cabela's, or of course at the troutmagnet.com website. That's a great way to try them out if you've not used them before, because you can get a few of them there and you can get them in several different colors, see which ones you like and what you think about them. Once you use them and you fall in love with them like I have, you're probably going to want to start buying them in bulk. So you can get 50 packs of the grub bodies on the troutmagnet.com website, or again at Bass Pro or Cabela's, that come in any single color, 50 to a pack. Those run about $6 or $7 depending on when and where you find them. But that's really the most economical way to get them. And if you're going to be fishing somewhere like creeks or rivers where you're going to get snagged and hung up a lot and lose them, you're really going to want some bigger packages like that. The jig heads are basically the same way. You can get those in 5 packs for around a couple bucks in most of those stores, but you also can get them in a 25 pack for around $8. Another thing to note about the Trout Magnet is that these things are super easy to fish, and there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can fish with them. You can put these things under a float, that's really effective, or you can use the old cast and retrieve method, which is my personal favorite. That's where you just cast them out, let them sink about halfway down into the water column, and then just start to slowly reel it back. Usually that'll drive the fish crazy and he'll hit that thing pretty quickly. But you also can mix it up and tip these with a little bit of live bait, like a little bit of a worm, or put a minnow on them, or you can use some Berkley Power Bait crappie nibbles, which I highly suggest. I use those almost all the time and have had a whole lot of luck with them. Another fun and really effective way to fish the Trout Magnet is to double or triple them up on your line. And that's just where you tie on 2 or 3 of them on the end of your line and space them out about 8 or 12 inches apart, kind of like a little makeshift sabiki rig if you've ever seen one of those. But that'll drive the fish nuts sometimes if you're over a school of them. Skipjack in particular seem to really like that when I've fished around them, and they'll tear these things up. Occasionally you'll hook more than 1 fish at a time, and you talk about fun getting those things in. Just be sure when you do that, you've got a little bit heavier line if you're planning on doing that kind of fishing. Trout magnets are also really durable. You can catch several fish on one trout magnet. As a matter of fact, I've had some days out here at the creek where I've fished all day long on just a single trout magnet. And usually when I lose them or have to replace them, it's because I've gotten hung up and snagged one somewhere, not because a fish has torn it up. Now bluegill will hit them pretty hard, and if you're catching several big old bluegill at one time, they'll wreak havoc on them, but still you can get several fish out of one tiny trout magnet. One final and maybe the most important thing that I'll mention about fishing with trout magnets is having the proper gear set up. Because these are such tiny, lightweight lures, especially if you're using them on those 1/64 ounce trout magnet jig heads, you're going to want to have some lightweight, thin diameter fishing line, or you're not going to be able to cast these things very far. My personal preference is to use either 2 or 4 pound test line. 2 pound anytime I can get away with it. If I'm fishing somewhere really snaggy, or I'm out in the river and there's a lot of rocks and stuff for fish to get wrapped around, I will beef that up a little to the 4 pound, but it's always going to be one of those 2 sizes that I'm going to use. My personal favorite is Berkley Vanish fluorocarbon in 2 pound tests. This is a fantastic silky smooth fishing line. It's inexpensive, especially for fluorocarbon, and you can cast a trout magnet a mile with this stuff. Pair that with your favorite ultralight rod and reel combo, and you can't ask for a better fishing experience, at least in my opinion. So that's the Trout Magnet in a nutshell. If you've not tried those before, go pick some up and try them. Promise you're gonna love them. Without further ado, here's some footage of some of those fish I caught today. Hope you enjoyed watching. As always, I certainly appreciate you. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Hope you have a great day, and we'll catch you next time. There's a little fish. Just a little small one here. What do we get? All right, a crappie. First fish of the morning on the Trout Magnet. Check that little beauty out. Absolutely love crappie. Hands down my favorite fish of all. Not a very big one, but beautiful nonetheless. Let's let her go there. There we go, a little bluegill. Gorgeous colors on that little fish. Isn't that pretty? Let's let him go here. There's a fish. They're getting this current. It's not a lot of current here, but when they get in it, it feels like they're bigger than they are. It's not a bad little bluegill there. Pretty, pretty fish. Check out the spots on the top of that one. Nice. Toss her back here. There's one. What a gorgeous fish. Beautiful. Toss her back here. Here we go. Nice. Very nice. Turn him loose here. Here comes one. Now that one's just a little morsel, but look at the color. That striping around his face, pretty orange around his tail there. Gorgeous little fish. Turn him loose here. There's one. Pretty nice little red breast here. A beauty. Well, the color on that thing is just phenomenal. This is probably my second favorite panfish to catch, or fish period, behind only the crappie. And those colors and the fight that this little guy can put up is a big reason behind that. Have you ever seen anything prettier come out of the water? Look at those little stripes on his face, that red eye, all that beautiful blue and orange going down to his tail there. Gorgeous. Let's turn him loose here. See ya, fella.